My name is Elsa, and I spent 12 years working at my father's diner since I was 15. My younger sister Madison was always our family's golden child, with her perfect grades and dreams of becoming a lawyer. Dad's favoritism wasn't exactly subtle, but I managed to handle it until that fateful day when I discovered a secret bank statement. $500,000 set aside for Madison's law school, while Dad told me those crushing words, "You're only good enough for a diner job." Before I continue my story, I'd love to know where you're watching from. Drop it in the comments below and hit that like and subscribe button to join me on this journey of finding my worth. I grew up in a middle-class suburb outside Boston. My father, James, built a successful chain of diners from the ground up. He was a man of strong work ethic and traditional values who believed family legacy was everything. My mother, Diane, balanced his intensity with her warmth until cancer took her when I was just 12 years old. Madison was 9 at the time, already showing signs of academic brilliance that delighted our father. After Mom passed away, Dad channeled his grief into an obsession with securing the family's future. "We need to make your mother proud," he would say. But it became clear that Madison's path was the one he believed would accomplish that goal. While I was practical and hardworking, Madison excelled at school and dreamed big. It wasn't that Dad didn't love me. I think he just didn't understand me. I remember the stark difference in how our achievements were celebrated. When Madison won the regional spelling bee in 6th grade, Dad closed the diner early and took us out for a fancy dinner. "This girl is going places," he announced to the waiter, beaming with pride. 3 months later, when I reorganized the diner's inventory system and saved him thousands of dollars, he simply nodded and said, "Good job, that's what I expect from you." I accepted my place in the family dynamic, the practical one, the responsible one, the one who would carry on the family business while Madison pursued greater things. I convinced myself this was just how families worked. The older child sacrifices, while the younger one flies. By the time I turned 19, I had been working at the diner for 4 years. I was studying business administration at community college when Dad had his first heart attack. It was mild, but it scared all of us. Without much discussion, I dropped out of college to help run the business full-time. "Just until I'm back on my feet," Dad promised, but somehow that temporary arrangement became permanent. Meanwhile, Madison was accepted to a prestigious university with a full academic scholarship. Dad couldn't have been prouder. "See what happens when you apply yourself," he would say within my earshot. I tried not to let it sting, telling myself that different people have different strengths. The day Madison left for college, Dad cried. I had never seen him cry before, not even at Mom's funeral. "Your mother would be so proud," he whispered to Madison as they hugged goodbye. I stood awkwardly to the side, wondering if Mom would have been proud of me too, or if she would have been disappointed that I was still just the diner girl. That evening, as I helped Dad close up, he looked at me with tired eyes and said, "At least I know I can always count on you, Elsa." It wasn't quite praise, more like acknowledgement of my reliability. I smiled anyway, desperate for any recognition. Even as a small voice inside me wondered if being dependable was really enough of an identity. During those years, I taught myself everything about running a successful restaurant business. I learned accounting, inventory management, staff, scheduling, and customer relations. I did it all without formal education, picking up knowledge through practical experience and late-night research. Dad never acknowledged my self-education, treating my growing expertise as something expected rather than earned, while Madison called home with stories of academic achievements and social triumphs. I quietly kept the family business running smoothly. Each time Dad hung up the phone with her, his face would glow with pride before settling back into its usual serious expression when he turned to me with the next work task. I told myself that someday my hard work would pay off. Someday Dad would look at me with the same pride he showed for Madison. Someday my practical skills would be valued just as much as her academic ones. I didn't realize then how deeply I was internalizing the message that I was somehow less worthy, that my path was somehow less valuable, that being good with my hands, with people with practical problems, somehow made me less deserving of celebration than being good with books and theories. This was the foundation of our family dynamic, built during those formative years after Mom's death. Dad's grief transformed into a singular vision of success with Madison at its center, and I, trying to fill the practical gap left by Mom's absence, became increasingly invisible despite being essential. If I had understood then what I know now about family dynamics, perhaps I would have spoken up sooner. Perhaps I would have demanded recognition rather than quietly accepting my role. But hindsight has a clarity that youth rarely possesses, and at the time, I simply did what I thought a good daughter should do. I worked hard, supported my family, and swallowed my growing resentment with each passing year. By the time I turned 25, I had been part of the diner business for a decade. The original location had expanded to 3 diners across the Boston area, largely due to my behind-the-scenes work. I had modernized our ordering systems, created a loyalty program that increased return customers by 30%, and developed several signature dishes that had been featured in local food magazines. Madison had just graduated with honors from her university. The whole family attended her graduation ceremony, where Dad embarrassingly cheered louder than anyone else when she crossed the stage. At the celebration dinner afterward, he raised his glass and announced, "To the next chapter. Madison will be applying to top law schools this fall." My sister beamed while I forced a smile and clinked my glass against hers. No one mentioned that I had just negotiated a favorable new lease for our 3rd location, saving the business thousands of dollars annually. My achievements always seemed to disappear in the glow of Madison's academic success. "Law school is expensive," I mentioned casually during dessert. "Will you need help with applications and finances?" Dad waved his hand dismissively. "Everything is taken care of. I've been planning for this since she was in high school." Something in his tone made me wonder exactly what that planning entailed, but I didn't press the issue. That night, as I drove home to my modest apartment, I questioned why I still sought validation from a father who clearly had different standards for his 2 daughters. The disparities became more pronounced in the months that followed. During a family dinner, I presented an idea for a food truck expansion that could increase our brand visibility and test new markets with minimal investment. I had created a detailed business plan with projected costs and returns. Dad barely glanced at my carefully prepared presentation. "Food trucks are a fad," he said dismissively. "We need to focus on our core business." And 10 minutes later, Madison offered her opinion on our menu design, suggesting we modernize with more vegan options. Despite having zero restaurant experience, Dad nodded enthusiastically. "See, this is the kind of forward thinking we need. Madison understands today's market." I bit my tongue so hard I tasted blood. Later that night, I vented my frustrations to Travis, the mechanic who had been servicing our delivery vans for years. We had started dating a few months earlier, bonding over our shared experience of having our practical skills undervalued. "Your dad doesn't see what's right in front of him," Travis said, his voice gentle but firm. "You're the reason those diners are still successful." "Sometimes I wonder if he'll ever see that," I admitted, allowing myself a rare moment of vulnerability. Travis squeezed my hand. "Maybe it's time you started thinking about what you want, not what your dad wants from you." His words resonated more than he knew. For years, I had subordinated my ambitions to the family business, assuming that eventually my dedication would be recognized. Now approaching my late 20s, I was beginning to question that assumption. The following week, Madison visited the main diner to share law school brochures with Dad. I overheard them discussing her future while I managed the lunch rush. "Harvard Law is the dream, of course," Madison said, her voice carrying from Dad's office. "But Yale and Columbia are strong contenders too." "Apply to all of them," Dad replied. "Money is no object for your education." I froze in the middle of taking inventory. Money is no object? This from the man who had rejected my request for a modest raise just last month, claiming the business needed to tighten belts due to rising food costs. The same man who questioned every equipment upgrade I proposed as unnecessary spending. When Madison emerged from the office, she gave me her typical condescending smile. "Hard at work as always, Elsa. It's cute how you found your little niche here." "Some of us contribute with actual work, not just dreams," I replied immediately, regretting the sharpness in my tone. Madison's smile didn't falter. We all have our place in the world. I guess this is yours. She glanced around the diner with barely disguised disdain before adding, Dad says you and your mechanic boyfriend make a perfect match. Two people content with you know the basics. The casual cruelty of her comment left me speechless. Later that night, I tried to talk to Dad about how Madison's words had hurt me. You're being too sensitive, he said without looking up from his paperwork. Madison is under a lot of pressure preparing for law school. And frankly, Elsa, there's nothing wrong with acknowledging that different people have different capabilities. You've always been good with the practical side of life, just like your Travis is good with cars. That's honorable work. But you make it sound like I couldn't do more if I wanted to. I pressed. Dad finally looked up, his expression a mixture of impatience and pity. Elsa, not everyone is meant for academic excellence. You found your level here at the diner, and there's no shame in that. But let's not pretend that running a register and managing waitstaff is equivalent to becoming a lawyer. His words cut deep, reinforcing what I had always suspected, but had never heard stated so plainly. In his eyes, I was capable of only so much. My potential had a ceiling, while Madison's seemed limitless. I left his office without another word, the gap between us widening with every passing day. Spring arrived with unusually warm weather. I was helping Dad organize his home office as part of our annual spring cleaning tradition. While he ran errands, I sorted through the filing cabinet, creating new folders for the current year's tax documents. That's when I found it. A thick manila envelope labeled Madison Law Fund, tucked behind personal tax returns. Curiosity got the better of me, and I opened it to find bank statements for a high-yield savings account. The balance displayed on the most recent statement made my heart stop. $504, $372.89. $500,000 for Madison's law school. With trembling hands, I flipped through the statements, tracing the account's growth over the past 8 years. Regular monthly deposits, occasional larger sums. I recognized the dates of some of the larger deposits. They corresponded with particularly profitable quarters for the diner chain, profits that I had helped generate with my innovations and hard work. All this time, Dad had been setting aside substantial amounts for Madison's education, while telling me the business was just getting by, while denying my requests for modest raises, while questioning my business expansion ideas as too financially risky. I sat on the floor of his office surrounded by evidence of his deception and felt something inside me crack. It wasn't just about the money. It was about the fundamental unfairness of it all. It was about the realization that no matter how hard I worked, I would never be valued equally in this family. I was still sitting there when Dad returned home. He took one look at the paper spread around me, and his face darkened. "Those are private documents," he said, his voice dangerously quiet. I looked up at him, no longer bothering to hide my tears. $500,000, Dad, for Madison's law school. While you told me we couldn't afford to give me a 5% raise after I increased profits by 20% last year. You don't understand the bigger picture, he said, moving to collect the bank statements. This is about investing in Madison's future. Her success will elevate the entire family. What about my future? I asked, my voice breaking. What about investing in me? Dad straightened up, fixing me with a stern look that I'd seen countless times growing up. Elsa, be realistic. You're good at what you do at the diner. That's your place. Madison has potential to achieve greatness. Sometimes as parents, we have to make decisions based on where our investments will yield the best returns. I'm your daughter, I whispered, not a business investment. Of course you're my daughter, and I love you, he replied, his tone softening slightly. But Madison needs this opportunity more than you do. You're already established in your career path. Established, I echoed in disbelief. I'm 27 working at your diner for barely above minimum wage with no ownership stake, no recognition, and apparently no future beyond being your reliable employee. Now you're being dramatic, Dad said, his patience clearly wearing thin. Not everyone is meant for professional success, Elsa. You're only good enough for a diner job. Madison is our family's future. That's just the reality we need to accept. His words hit me like a physical blow. You're only good enough for a diner job. After 12 years of dedication, after all my contributions, after sacrificing my own education to help him. This was how he saw me. Before I could respond, the front door opened and Madison walked in. She must have been planning to surprise Dad with a visit. Her smile faltered when she sensed the tension in the room. Then her eyes fell on the bank statements still clutched in Dad's hand. "What's going on?" she asked, looking between us. "Your sister has been snooping through private financial documents," Dad said. "I wasn't snooping," I corrected, finding my voice. "I was organizing files for you and found evidence that you've been lying to me for years." Madison's expression shifted from confusion to understanding, then settled into something I had never seen before, a small, satisfied smirk. "Is this about my law school fund?" she asked, stepping fully into the room. "Really, Elsa? You're jealous of that." "I'm not jealous," I said, standing up to face her. "I'm hurt that Dad has been secretly setting aside this much money for you, while telling me the business couldn't afford basic raises or improvements. Money that I helped earn." Madison exchanged a look with Dad before turning back to me with an expression of patronizing patience. "Just be practical, Elsa. We both know who's going places. Dad is making a smart investment in the future. Your place has always been at the diner. There's nothing wrong with that." In that moment, I saw with perfect clarity what they both thought of me, not as someone with potential or dreams of my own, but as a supporting character in their story. Someone who existed to prop up their ambitions while setting aside my own. The realization was both devastating and freeing. Without another word, I walked past them both, grabbed my purse from the hall table, and left the house. I could hear Dad calling my name, but I didn't turn back. I got in my car and drove, tears blurring my vision until I found myself outside Travis's apartment building. He opened the door, took one look at my face, and pulled me into a hug. "What happened?" he asked, leading me inside. Through broken sobs, I told him everything. The secret fund, Dad's cruel words, Madison's smirk. By the time I finished, night had fallen, and Travis sat beside me on his worn couch, his face a mixture of anger and compassion. "You deserve better than this, Elsa," he said finally. "You always have." "What am I supposed to do now?" I asked, feeling lost. The diner had been my whole life for so long. The thought of walking away terrified me almost as much as the thought of staying. "What do you want to do?" Travis asked simply. "Not what your dad wants. Not what's expected. What do you want?" It was such a simple question, but no one had ever really asked me before. And I realized with some surprise that I didn't immediately know the answer. I barely slept that night, Travis's question echoing in my mind. What did I want? By dawn, I still didn't have a complete answer, but I knew I couldn't return to the diner as if nothing had happened. I needed to face my father and sister and establish that something fundamental had changed. Despite my emotional turmoil, I arrived at the diner at my usual early hour. The familiar smell of coffee and baking pastries hit me as I unlocked the front door. For the first time, I looked at the space with fresh eyes, the new point of sale system I had researched and implemented, the revised menu with my signature dishes that had increased dinner revenue by 40%, the customer loyalty program I had created from scratch, now with over 5,000 members. This place carried my fingerprints everywhere, yet I had no real claim to it, no recognition, no stake in its success beyond my meager salary. I was setting up for breakfast service when I heard voices from Dad's office. He and Madison were already there, speaking in low, serious tones. I moved closer to the partially open door. "She's overreacting," Madison was saying. "It's not like she ever showed interest in law school. What would she even do with that kind of education?" "Elsa has always been emotional," Dad replied with a sigh. "She'll calm down and realize this is for the best. She belongs here. Honestly, she should be grateful," Madison continued. "Not everyone gets to have their career path so clearly laid out for them. No student loans, no pressure to succeed at a high level. She has it easy." Their dismissive assessment of my life and potential was the final confirmation I needed. I pushed the door open, causing both of them to look up in surprise. "Elsa," Dad said, recovering quickly. "Good you're here. We need to discuss the inventory before the delivery arrives." "No," I said, the word feeling foreign but empowering. What we need to discuss is my resignation. Dad stared at me as if I'd started speaking another language. Don't be ridiculous, you can't resign. I can, and I am, I replied, my voice steadier than I expected. Effective immediately. This is about yesterday. Dad said, his tone shifting to the reasonable, patronizing one he used when he thought I was being irrational. You're upset about the money for Madison's law school. I understand, but you need to see the bigger picture. I see the picture perfectly clearly now, I said. For 12 years, I've poured my heart and soul into this business. I've created systems and menus that increased profits. I've managed staff and solved problems. I've done everything asked of me and more. And in return, I've been taken for granted, underpaid, and treated as if I have no potential beyond serving food and counting inventory. That's not fair, Dad protested, but I could see the discomfort in his eyes. What's not fair is discovering that the business I helped build has been secretly funding Madison's future, while I was told there wasn't enough money for my raise. I continued. What's not fair is hearing my own father say I'm only good enough for a diner job, while my sister smirks about who's going places. What's not fair is being expected to accept my place without question. Madison had the grace to look slightly embarrassed, but she recovered quickly. You're making this personal when it's really about capabilities and potential. Dad is being practical with his resources. Yes, and now I'm being practical with mine, I replied. My time, my skills, my knowledge. I'm investing them somewhere they'll be valued. Dad's expression changed from discomfort to alarm as he realized I was serious. You'll be back when you realize you can't do better, he said, a hint of desperation creeping into his voice. This business is your safety net, Elsa. What are you going to do without it? I guess I'll find out, I said, removing my name tag and placing it on his desk. I've already trained the assistant manager to handle most of my duties. The staff schedules for the next 2 weeks are done. The supply orders are set up for automatic renewal. As I turned to leave, Madison called after me. Don't come asking for handouts when you fail. I paused at the door and looked back at them both. The only failure here is that neither of you ever saw my true value. That's a mistake I won't make again. With that, I walked out of the diner terrified, but strangely exhilarated. Later that day, Travis found me at a small park near my apartment, staring thoughtfully at the pond. How did it go? He asked, sitting beside me. I quit, I said simply. Travis let out a low whistle. That must have felt good. Terrifying, actually, I admitted. I have some savings, but not enough to last more than a few months. I don't know what I'm going to do. Travis was quiet for a moment before saying, Remember that idea we talked about a few months ago, the auto shop and diner combination? I nodded. We had joked about it during one of our dates. A place where people could get their cars serviced while enjoying good food instead of sitting in a dreary waiting room with vending machine coffee. I've been thinking about it, Travis continued. I have some money saved. My uncle has been wanting to retire and sell his garage. With your restaurant experience and my mechanical knowledge, we could create something unique. That's a nice dream, I said. But dreams require capital, and after what just happened, I'm not exactly confident in my abilities. Travis turned to face me fully. That's your father talking. The Elsa I know transformed 3 failing diners into successful businesses. The Elsa I know created systems and menus that people love. The Elsa I know is capable of far more than she's been allowed to believe. His unwavering belief in me brought tears to my eyes. For the first time, I allowed myself to truly consider the possibility that my father had been wrong about me. That perhaps my potential wasn't limited to being a diner manager. That perhaps I deserved more than I had settled for. Over the next few weeks, I took inventory not of diner supplies, but of my own skills and resources. I had saved about $20,000 over the years despite my modest salary. I had extensive knowledge of food service management and customer relations. I had contacts with suppliers and local business owners. And most importantly, I had Travis's belief in me, which was slowly helping me rebuild belief in myself. We researched small business grants and loans specifically for innovative concept businesses. We created a detailed business plan for our auto shop and diner combination, which we decided to call Gear Shift Diner. We found that many banks were actually interested in our unique concept. I reached out to several regular customers from the diner who owned businesses themselves initially just for advice. To my surprise, many expressed interest in our concept. A local real estate developer offered us a deal on a location in a developing area of town. A retired restaurant owner offered to mentor me through the startup phase. With each person who showed confidence in my abilities, my own confidence grew stronger. The skills I had developed over years at the diner, which my father and sister had dismissed, were precisely the skills that others valued. My practical knowledge, my work ethic, my creativity in solving problems. These were assets, not limitations. 3 months after walking out of my father's diner, I signed a lease on a building that would become Gearshift Diner. Travis and I pooled our savings, secured a small business loan, and gathered a small group of investors who believed in our concept. I officially cut ties with my family, changing my phone number, and moving to an apartment closer to our new business location. It was the scariest and most exciting time of my life. For the first time, I was charting my own course, not following the path laid out for me by others. The journey ahead was uncertain, but for the first time, it was truly mine. 1 year later, Gearshift Diner celebrated its grand opening. The concept was unlike anything else in the area. One half of the building was a modern auto repair shop run by Travis and his team, while the other half was a stylish diner, where customers could enjoy quality food and coffee while waiting for their vehicles. The space featured large windows between the dining area and the garage, allowing customers to actually watch their cars being serviced. We created a comfortable industrial chic atmosphere with vintage automotive memorabilia and custom furniture made from repurposed car parts. Local media picked up on our unique concept. A feature in the City magazine described Gearshift as revolutionizing the auto service experience by combining gourmet comfort food with transparent mechanical work. The article highlighted my background in the restaurant industry without mentioning my father's business by name, focusing instead on my innovative approach to customer service. The first months weren't without challenges. We had to adjust our staffing after discovering the morning rush was bigger than anticipated. Some equipment issues caused a 3-day closure that tested our emergency funds. But each problem we faced, we solved together without anyone telling us we weren't capable. About 6 months after our opening, a regular customer who worked at a competing auto shop mentioned in passing that my father's business was struggling. "Word is, they lost a key manager and haven't recovered," he said casually, unaware of my connection. "The food quality has gone down, and they're losing customers to that new chain that opened across town." I nodded noncommittally, unsure how to feel about this information. Part of me felt a surge of vindication. They were struggling without me proving that my contributions had been valuable all along. Another part felt a surprising pang of sadness for the business I had helped build, and the father who still, despite everything, was family. I didn't seek out more information about them, focusing instead on growing our business. Travis and I worked well together, his mechanical expertise complementing my food service and business management skills. We quickly developed a reputation for both excellent car service and delicious food, a combination that proved irresistible to busy professionals in our area. 9 months in, we were already looking at expanding our hours and menu. By our 1 year anniversary, we were consistently profitable and beginning to scout locations for a second Gearshift Diner. Meanwhile, rumors about Madison reached me through mutual acquaintances. Apparently, law school wasn't going as planned. She was struggling with the workload and competitive environment despite her previous academic success. One friend mentioned seeing her back in town during what should have been midterms, looking stressed and unhappy. I tried not to dwell on these reports. My sister had made her choices just as I had made mine. If she was struggling, that was for her and my father to address. I had my own life to focus on now. 18 months after opening Gearshift, we signed the lease on our second location. The business model had proven successful enough to attract investors eager to help us expand. We hired a talented manager for the original location, allowing me to focus on establishing the new one. Around the same time, we received a nomination for a Regional Small Business Innovation Award. The recognition brought more media attention and an influx of new customers curious about our unique concept. It was during this busy period that I received an unexpected call from a number I didn't recognize. When I answered, there was a long pause before I heard my father's voice for the first time in almost 2 years. Elsa, he said, his voice sounding older, more hesitant than I remembered. I saw the article about your business award nomination. I waited unsure how to respond. Part of me wanted to hang up to protect the new life and confidence I had built. Another part wanted to scream all the things I had never said. Instead, I simply said, yes. It looks like you're doing well, he continued awkwardly. The concept is innovative. Thank you, I replied, keeping my tone neutral. I was wondering if you might have some time to discuss a business matter, he said finally. The diners are facing some challenges, and given your expertise. So that was it. Not a call to reconnect or apologize, but to ask for business advice. The irony was almost painful. I'm sorry to hear that, I said carefully. But I'm extremely busy with my own business right now. I don't have capacity to consult on others. There was another long pause before he said, I understand. Congratulations on your success. After hanging up, I sat in my office for a long time processing the complex emotions the call had stirred up. Anger that he had reached out only when he needed something. Satisfaction that he was acknowledging my business acumen, however indirectly. Sadness that our relationship had deteriorated to this point. But most of all, I felt a sense of closure. I had proven to him and to myself that I was capable of far more than being just good enough for a diner job. I had built something successful on my own terms, and while part of me would always wish for my family's genuine support and recognition, I no longer needed it to validate my worth. A few weeks later, Travis proposed during a quiet moment at our original Gearshift location after hours. As we celebrated with champagne, surrounded by the business we had built together, I realized that I had found not just professional success, but also the kind of partnership and support I had always deserved. That same month, a local business magazine did a feature story on Gearshift's success and expansion plans. The reporter asked about my background, and I spoke briefly about my years of experience in family restaurants, without elaborating on the painful details. The story ran with the headline, Shifting Gears: How Elsa Williams Revolutionized the Auto Service Experience. When a copy arrived at my office, I allowed myself a moment of pure pride. Not because I had proven my father wrong, but because I had finally proven myself right. Around the same time, I heard through a mutual friend that my father's business was facing possible bankruptcy. 2 of the 3 diner locations had already closed. Madison had apparently dropped out of law school after failing several key courses. The family legacy my father had been so concerned about protecting was crumbling without my practical skills holding it together. I acknowledged the news with a complex mixture of emotions, then turned my attention back to building my own legacy, one I could truly be proud of. 3 years after walking away from my family's business, I was running 3 successful Gearshift diner locations. Our innovative concept had caught the attention of a national entrepreneur magazine, which featured us in their Businesses to Watch issue. The feature included my portrait on the cover standing confidently between the diner and garage sections of our flagship location. I was reviewing plans for our 4th location when my assistant interrupted with an unexpected message. There's a Madison Williams here to see you. She says she's your sister. The surname struck me. Madison had started using our father's last name instead of our shared one. It was a small detail that somehow perfectly captured how distant we had become. Send her in, I said after a moment's hesitation. Madison entered my office looking very different from the confident, smirking sister I remembered. Her designer clothes had been replaced with a simple blouse and pants. The superior expression she typically wore had given way to something more humble, almost nervous. Your office is nice, she said awkwardly, glancing around at the modern space with its large windows overlooking the busy diner below. Thank you, I replied, gesturing for her to sit. What brings you here, Madison? She fidgeted with her purse strap before meeting my eyes. I need to talk to you about Dad and the family business. I'm listening, I said, keeping my expression neutral. Madison took a deep breath. Everything's falling apart, Elsa. The original diner is the only one still open, and it's barely hanging on. Dad's been trying to run it himself, but... She trailed off, shaking her head. He's not well. The stress is affecting his health. I'm sorry to hear that, I said and meant it. Despite everything, I didn't wish ill health on my father. We need help, Madison said bluntly. Financial help specifically. The bank is threatening foreclosure on the diner and Dad's medical bills are piling up. What about the law school fund? I asked. There was over $500,000 set aside for your education. Madison had the grace to look ashamed. It's gone. Most went to my first year of law school and living expenses. Then when the diner started failing, Dad used the rest to try to keep them afloat. And law school? I asked. I heard you dropped out. She nodded, staring down at her hands. I hated it. I was never cut out for it, to be honest. Dad pushed me in that direction because it was prestigious, and I went along with it because it made him proud. But I was miserable and failing my classes. The revelation didn't surprise me as much as it might have once. So what are you doing now? Working as a hostess at the diner, she said with a humorless laugh. Ironic, right? All that money and pressure for me to become a high-powered attorney, and I ended up exactly where you started. I didn't comment on the irony, instead asking, "Why are you here, Madison? What exactly are you hoping I'll do?" She straightened in her chair. We need a loan to save the diner and help with Dad's medical expenses. You're successful now. You could help if you wanted to. As a family obligation, you mean? I asked, remembering all too well how family obligation had been used to keep me in my place for years. Yes, she said, then seemed to reconsider. I mean, I know we haven't been close and things ended badly, but he's still your father. We're still family. I studied my sister, seeing beyond her practiced charm for perhaps the first time. Madison, can I ask you something honestly? Were you ever actually interested in becoming a lawyer, or was that all for Dad? She seemed taken aback by the question. After a moment, she admitted, I wanted to make him proud. After Mom died, it seemed like the only thing that made him happy was my academic achievements. So I kept achieving. Her voice grew quieter. But no, I never really wanted to be a lawyer. And what about me? I asked. How did you feel about how I was treated in the family? Madison shifted uncomfortably. I knew Dad favored me. I guess I liked the attention, so I didn't question it. And honestly, I was jealous of you in some ways. Jealous of me? I couldn't hide my surprise. You were always so capable, she explained. So practical and independent. You knew how to do real things, fix problems, talk to people. I was good at tests and papers, but whenever I faced a real-world problem, I felt helpless. You never seemed helpless. Her admission was unexpected and oddly touching. For years I had envied her for being the golden child, never realizing she might have envied me for my practical abilities. Madison, I said carefully, I can't just give you money. That wouldn't solve the real problems. Please, Elsa, she pleaded. Dad won't admit it, but he needs you. The business needs you. I'll think about it, I promised. But I need to see things for myself first. And if I do help, it will be on my terms, not Dad's. After Madison left, I called Travis to discuss the situation. He listened without judgment as I worked through my conflicted feelings. What do you want to do? He asked when I finished echoing the question that had changed my life years ago. I want to see for myself, I decided, before I make any decisions. The next day, I drove to the original diner location for the first time in 3 years. The faded sign and empty parking lot were shocking. This place had once been bustling with regular customers and positive energy. Now it looked abandoned despite being technically open. Inside was worse. The once spotless counters were dull and scratched. The menu had been reduced to a single page of basic items. Only 2 tables were occupied, the customers looking as tired as the surroundings. My father was at the register. His once commanding presence diminished. He had aged dramatically, his hair now completely gray, his shoulders hunched. He looked up as the bell above the door announced my arrival, and for a moment, he didn't seem to recognize me. Elsa, he said finally, her name almost a question. Hello, Dad, I replied, taking in the state of what had once been his pride and joy. Madison came to see me yesterday. She shouldn't have done that, he said, straightening slightly. We're managing fine. The obvious lie hung in the air between us. I gestured at the empty diner. Clearly. Did you come to gloat? He asked, a flash of the old pride showing through. To see how far we've fallen while you've succeeded? No, I said simply. I came because despite everything, I still care what happens to you. Something in his expression cracked at my words. The facade of control slipped, revealing the frightened, failing man beneath. I made mistakes, he admitted, his voice barely audible. Many mistakes. It was the closest thing to an apology I had ever heard from him. Madison appeared from the kitchen, surprise evident on her face when she saw me. You came, she said. I came to see for myself, I clarified, and to talk honestly if that's possible for this family. We sat at a corner booth, the three of us together for the first time in years. The conversation was difficult, with old habits of deflection and defensiveness surfacing repeatedly. But gradually, truth began to emerge. Dad confessed that his fixation on Madison's law career had been misguided. I thought it was what your mother would have wanted, he explained. She always said she wanted her daughters to have every opportunity she didn't have. I interpreted that as prestigious education, high-profile career. Mom would have wanted us to be happy, I countered, to use our natural abilities in ways that fulfilled us. You're right, he conceded, looking older than his years. I see that now. Madison admitted that the pressure to succeed academically had crushed her. I was depressed through most of law school, she revealed, but I couldn't admit it because I didn't want to disappoint everyone. As for me, I explained how their dismissal of my abilities and potential had driven me away, but ultimately forced me to recognize my own value. I built Gearshift because you convinced me I wasn't good enough for anything more than working at your diner, I told my father. So in a strange way, I should thank you for underestimating me so severely that I had to prove you wrong. My father's eyes filled with tears, a sight I had seen only once before, when Madison left for college. I was wrong about you, he admitted, his voice breaking. I was wrong about everything. Madison reached across the table to touch my hand. We both were, and we've paid the price for it. Their regret seemed genuine, their recognition of past mistakes clear. But years of hurt couldn't be erased in a single conversation. I'm not ready to forgive everything that happened, I said honestly, but I'm willing to consider helping on certain conditions. Anything, my father said quickly. Not anything, I corrected. Specific terms. First, I won't just give you money. That's not a solution, it's a band-aid. Second, if I help rebuild this business, I do it my way with proper recognition and authority. Third, we start family counseling to address the dysfunctional patterns that got us here. Madison nodded immediately. My father hesitated, his old pride briefly visible before he too nodded in agreement. And one more thing, I added. No more secrets in this family. No more pretending some of us are worth more than others. We all contribute in different ways, and those differences should be respected, not ranked. I left that day without making any firm commitments. I needed time to consider whether rebuilding these damaged relationships was truly possible or even desirable. But as I drove away, I felt something I hadn't expected. Not the vindication of seeing them brought low, but the possibility of a new kind of relationship built on honesty and mutual respect, rather than hierarchy and expectations. The decision wasn't easy, but ultimately, I chose to offer them a chance, not out of family obligation, but because it aligned with my own values of compassion and growth. I would help them rebuild not as the dutiful daughter returning to her place, but as a successful businesswoman, offering her expertise on her own terms. 5 years after discovering my father's betrayal and walking away from my family, I stood in the renovated original diner, now rebranded as Legacy Diner, a nod to our complicated family history. It was Sunday morning, and the place was bustling with the breakfast crowd. The transformation was remarkable not just in the physical space, but in the people who occupied it. My father moved among the tables, greeting regular customers with genuine warmth. At 62, he looked healthier than he had in years, the burden of pretense and disappointment lifted from his shoulders. When he introduced me to a new customer, his words carried none of the old dismissiveness. This is my daughter, Elsa, the business genius who saved this place and built her own restaurant empire. I just follow her lead these days. It had taken nearly 2 years of careful rebuilding both of the business and our relationship. I had insisted on complete transparency in all financial matters, regular family therapy sessions, and a clear business agreement that protected everyone's interests. The process hadn't been smooth or easy, but it had been necessary for true healing to occur. Madison had found her own path, discovering a genuine talent for restaurant management that had nothing to do with our father's expectations. She now managed Legacy Diner with skill and confidence, her natural people skills flourishing in a role she had chosen rather than been pushed into. "Table 6 is asking for your cranberry orange muffins again," she said, passing me with a tray of coffee cups. "I told them they're so popular we can barely keep them in stock." "Tell them we'll have a fresh batch in 20 minutes, I replied, watching my once condescending sister now thriving in a practical role she actually enjoyed. Gearshift Diner had expanded to a regional chain of 7 locations across 3 states with plans for national franchising and development. I split my time between overseeing that growing enterprise and consulting on Legacy Diner, which had become profitably stable under Madison's day-to-day management. Travis and I had married 3 years earlier in a simple ceremony at our original Gearshift location. Now I rested a hand on my growing belly, feeling our first child move. The baby shower the previous weekend had been a family affair, with my father giving a speech that brought tears to everyone's eyes. I made the grave mistake of undervaluing one daughter while overvaluing another. He had said, his voice thick with emotion. I nearly lost both of them because of my blindness. This grandchild will never doubt their worth or have to prove themselves to be loved. This is my promise. As I helped Madison prepare for the Sunday brunch rush, I reflected on the long, difficult journey our family had taken. The healing hadn't happened overnight. There had been setbacks, arguments, and moments when I questioned whether reconciliation was possible. But gradually, with consistent effort and genuine change on all sides, we had built something new from the ruins of our old relationship. My father now proudly told his friends about both his daughter's successes. Madison had found genuine fulfillment in restaurant management recently, starting to date a kind music teacher who appreciated her for who she truly was, not what she had achieved academically. And I had created a business that reflected my values and utilized my natural talents, while also reclaiming a family relationship I had once thought irreparably broken. During a quiet moment, my father joined me at the counter, his eyes taking in the thriving business around us. "You were always more than good enough," he said softly. "I just couldn't see it. My own fears and grief blinded me to your true capabilities." "We've all grown," I acknowledged. "That's what matters now." The journey had taught me that forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting or excusing harmful behavior. It means creating space for genuine change and new patterns to emerge. It means allowing people to evolve beyond their worst moments and choices. I had forgiven my father and sister, not because they deserved it, but because holding on to resentment would have kept me tethered to the past. Their genuine remorse and consistent effort to change made that forgiveness possible, but the decision had ultimately been for my own peace. That evening, as Travis and I sat on the porch of our home, I thought about the child we would soon welcome. This child would grow up seeing their mother valued and respected for her abilities. They would learn that worth isn't measured by degrees or prestige, but by character, effort, and how you treat others. They would know that family means support and acceptance, not competition and comparison. Sometimes the people who underestimate you give you the greatest gift, the motivation to discover your own value, independent of their limited perception. My father's cruel words had pushed me to prove him wrong, but in doing so, I had ultimately proven something far more important to myself. We are all more than good enough for the lives we choose to build. And sometimes the path others dismiss as beneath you leads to exactly where you were meant to be all along. Have you ever been underestimated by someone close to you? How did you respond to their lack of faith in your abilities? Share your story in the comments below. And if this story of standing up for your worth resonated with you, please hit that like button. Subscribe to hear more stories like this, and share with someone who might need the reminder that they are more than good enough, regardless of what others might say. Thank you for listening to my journey. And remember, sometimes the greatest success is proving your own worth to yourself, not to others.